Welcome back to the Painted Pages channel presenting Chapter 10 of Odyssey. Enjoy the creation of breathtaking acrylic paintings, bringing the pages of our story to life. Chapter 10, Playing God. We were back at home in my Atlanta apartment after a few minutes. This is unbelievable. I was on the other side of the world 20 minutes ago, and now I'm here. Unbelievable, I kept repeating to myself. I can get used to this kind of traveling, I admitted.
Does that mean you're ready to take another trip with me?
His eyes sparkled with joy. I've never had such a good time in my life. I would love to take another trip with you. I couldn't wait for our next journey.
But it will always be a surprise. You need to get out of your comfort zone.
Challenge accepted, I said, as I fully trusted him. He settled on the couch across from me as I sat with both legs up and crossed, leaning sideways to face him. It was still overwhelming to see him in my living room. He was magnificently made, with features so perfect that they could only belong to a being from outside this world, a god or an angel, I thought to myself. I was in the presence of a supernatural being who claimed to be my soulmate. He gracefully moved closer to me on the couch, reached up for my feet, and put them on his lap. I had to lean back to the corner of the L-shaped couch. He barely held my feet, and I sensed a wave of heat running from his hands to my body. "What are you doing?" It was as if all the anxiety and fatigue I had felt all day was draining from my body, taking me into a deep state of relaxation.
I'm revitalizing you.
He cocked his head, and the corner of his mouth twitched. I melted under the power of his hands. My whole body relaxed against them, and I could hardly manage not to groan but realized my eyelids were getting heavier. I wasn't ready to let him go yet, and I had to stay awake. "Are you going to continue?" I asked, trying to keep my eyes open. "And please stop doing what you're doing. It makes me sleepy." He stopped, but he didn't let my feet go.
Where were we?
"Those advanced beings played God," I reminded him, but I didn't think he needed my help.
They taught humans about energy, the dimensions, and the truth about the Creator, that they needed to live synchronized with nature and respect it, and get rid of their fears. The Egyptians, especially, became really advanced, and humans reached a state that no longer needed direct help from any advanced beings. So these so-called gods eventually retreated from direct physical support and ascended to higher realms. Their legacy stayed in the stories and myths.
"So, if you were on the Earth during that era, you would have been considered one of those gods, right?" I asked teasingly.
Probably. If they knew I could control the elements and realized I wasn't aging or dying anytime soon, they would probably have worshipped me eventually and called me god of who knows what.
"And yet here you are massaging my feet," I added joyfully.
It is a pleasure, my lady.
He had been distracted from his narrative, and he paused more seconds than I would anticipate. "Should I get you something to drink?" I asked. He seemed to be tired.
I'm fine, thank you. It is just that I don't want to bore you with all these stories, but I want you to understand them.
I was a little offended by his comment. He didn't think I was intelligent enough to comprehend what he was explaining and thought I wasn't really into it. "I'm not bored," I assured him, sounding annoyed.
Okay, sorry. I had to make sure. Now we're coming to the part you're most interested in, today's most influential religions. Egypt did very well for a very long time. Only the most knowledgeable ones became rulers. Each king would be trained as a priest first, so they would know the truth about creation and rule their people accordingly. But like everything else, their dynasty had to come to an end. Instead of respecting life and seeing everything as part of creation, they used slaves to build statues of their gods and worship them without thinking about the true meaning behind it. Galactic Council was, of course, expecting the Earth cycle to be unavoidable. They decided to prolong the length of the cycle by raising the vibrations of the humans. That would also provide a soft landing when the time came, so more would ascend. They followed a different approach this time. They agreed to send a group of highly evolved souls to Earth to be born as humans. They're the prophets and their inner circle, very well known to humanity today. They were incarnated on Earth as you were.
"I wonder if the evolved souls realized they made the biggest mistake of their lives," I said teasingly. "I still think I was brainless to choose to live in the third dimension on Earth." He shook his head.
No, they didn't make a mistake and neither did you. You were brave to choose Earth.
His eyes stayed firmly on me. Okay, keep going, I interrupted. I didn't want to hear about my decision again. Curiosity, bravery nonsense. You were saying that highly evolved souls were sent to Earth as human beings. He rolled his eyes but continued anyway.
The whole reason behind those highly evolved souls being human was that they wanted to show human beings that they too are capable of creating miracles and feeling worthy.
This is what you were doing at Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, I exclaimed, remembering the conversation we'd had with Arnis and Anne. And finally, I realized what they were trying to accomplish. I swear he blushed.
You can't really compare it.
He smiled.
What we did was on a much smaller scale compared to what the prophets were sent to achieve. Plus, we did it to have fun. There were times when it was not so much fun for them. They encountered a lot of resistance, but they kept going anyway. They fought for human rights, love, and forgiveness.
But even the most basic human rights are still an issue to this day, I protested. Take slavery, for instance. Human trafficking is probably one of the most lucrative businesses around the globe. We haven't improved an inch. Azur sighed.
Again, and I've told you this before, slavery and other negative energies cannot be avoided completely. They have always been part of Earth, because humans send out negative thoughts and feed that energy field unintentionally while trying to protect the innocent. However, you can soften that energy and its impact on Earth by raising human consciousness. Think of it like your body. If you take better care of it, it will last longer, and your quality of life will increase. But you'll never be able to keep your body from getting old. So raising the consciousness of people will affect the Earth's quality of life in the same way.
I see. I nodded my head. And thank you for reminding me I'll be getting old while you stay like this forever, I muttered, feeling annoyed. My feet were still resting on his lap, and I had sunk into the couch listening to him.
Why are you sitting so far away?
He asked abruptly. His gaze again reminded me of an angel. He leaned forward and pulled me into his arms. I didn't resist. How are the angels playing a role in all of this? Are they even real? I asked. I wasn't facing him anymore. My head rested on his chest.
If you understand that everything is energy, you will also understand that angels are energy beings existing in higher dimensions. They work with the Galactic Federation. They even help them to convey their messages to the prophets.
He straightened up.
Are you tired? We can call it a day and continue tomorrow after your work.
I felt as if my wings had been cut off as soon as he talked about leaving me for the night. And worst of all, I had to go to work the following day. I felt the familiar feeling of heaviness in my chest that prevented me from breathing. I needed a few seconds to stabilize my breath to make my voice sound natural. No, I'm not tired at all. It's not even 7 o'clock yet. Please continue. I was pleading with him deep inside not to leave me. He sighed deeply. I sensed he wasn't sure what he needed to do. I didn't think he really wanted to leave.
The Earth was getting closer to its last cycle before the Ascension. So Muhammad, the last master, who was also an advanced soul like the others before him, was sent to the Earth.
So it's true that Muhammad is the last prophet and Islam is the last religion? I remembered how proud my father was of the fact that the Quran was the last book and that there wouldn't be anything replacing it, as it was perfect. Azur knew what I meant, as he knew I remembered clearly that comment by my father.
The Quran is not the last book.
He answered my thoughts rather than my question.
However, it is true that Muhammad is the last prophet and Islam is the last religion. The Galactic Federation has no intention of sending any other religions to Earth.
Did they give up on us, or is it because Islam is perfect as it is? I asked, a little upset.
Neither. There is no need for another religion. Earth is approaching the end of its cycle, but also an era in which religions no longer serve humans. You all now have the potential to elevate your consciousness collectively, like the branches of a tree, reaching higher dimensions while staying rooted in the Earth. By doing so, you can become connected with both the Earth and the wider universe, making it easier for you to find the truth in your hearts. Many individuals have already discovered this truth, leading to the channeling of numerous new books, but none of the authors intended to create a religion or become prophets. Every human being now has the tools of Buddha, Moses, Jesus, or Muhammad, or any other master who ever lived on Earth. It is time for humanity to leave all religions behind and act like one united being. That is the only way to ascend, all together, with as many souls as possible.
The tree of life, I murmured to myself, envisioning how we can collectively form the trunk of the tree, nourished by its branches and roots. It felt good, but didn't help my irritation with my father. He had no clue what his religion was about, and yet he left his family in the name of his ridiculous belief system. My brow was furrowed, thinking it all out. This is not helping, I confessed. The more you explain this, the more upset I am with my father. I turned around, tucking my legs beneath me to face Azur. I wanted to see his eyes. He reached up and ran his hands through my hair, moving the curls that fell on my face. I was distracted by his act of intimacy, and my furrow and frustration turned into a blush. He chuckled at my reaction, but continued anyway.
People believe in what they're ready to believe in, Lara. He could be your father, but he is a young soul. Nevertheless, you should stop trying to reason with his behavior, but forgive him for who he is, which is a child of God.
I sighed, looking down. Why did everything have to be taught in parables and metaphors? Why didn't they send the information in a form that everybody could understand? I asked. If it was easier, I'm sure we would have had an easier time understanding the message. Even the young souls would have comprehended the true meaning of those messages. I looked up to see his eyes, but I was so close to his face, I couldn't help but reach up to touch his eyebrow. I traced it to the side of his face. He closed his eyes until I retrieved my hand. He smiled gently, cleared his throat, and continued.
There are many reasons. One is that it's not easy to explain the unexplainable. Neither the human mind nor its language is advanced enough to comprehend or express the true nature of the universe. However, metaphors and analogies are not limited to logic. They can be perceived much more easily by people. Besides, simple language that could be understood by everybody would not be highly regarded by humans. It is an ego thing. The other reason was that humans were not ready to learn the truth about creation, that there were ETs or other dimensional beings, or that they were a part of God and capable of creating anything. In the wrong hands, the knowledge could have created evil and destroyed the earth in a heartbeat. Even without the knowledge, humans are pretty good at creating the worst. Can you imagine what they could do with all the right intentions? So the higher beings used a language only available to the souls with good intentions and an understanding of love. The rest understood only the surface of the true messages.
He kissed my hand, sending a tingling sensation through my body. Yeah, my father wasn't even capable of understanding the surface of the message, I complained. I think both he and his family practiced religion out of fear, not love.
It is a problem for a majority of humans on Earth from any religion, especially for the younger souls. Religions eventually became the reflection of ego. Once ego interferes, humans see God as judgmental and not loving or forgiving. Islam seemed harsher than any other religion because of the time in which it was received. Muhammad was sent to an era and a group of people that were going through exceptionally hard lives. Women did not have any rights, and slavery was a common practice in a very high testosterone, warlike society. Muhammad had to adjust to his environment to gain followers. He had to fight with his people to spread his words, but he was a great healer and a great messenger at the same time. He created miracles like Moses and Jesus did. None of these prophets were any better or worse than each other, but they all did what they were supposed to do in their era. They all had to have the right characteristics to get the job done, and they did help their followers to raise their consciousness.
I nodded. I understood his point. I still had millions of questions, but I was tired. I yawned, couldn't manage to hide it, and it was a loud one.
You need to rest,
he insisted. One last question, I pleaded. Would you like to stay with me tonight? I wasn't ready to let him go. He didn't seem like he was taken aback by my proposal, but was probably expecting it. You can stay in the guest room, I said to be clear on the subject. I don't think it's as comfortable as your spacecraft, but I'd be really happy to know you're around.
You know sooner or later you need to overcome your fears,
he suggested, raising his eyebrow. It's not my fears, I said. I'm just not ready to let you go yet. He looked pleased by my answer. I was his untamed soulmate. I had never before admitted that I had feelings for him, but finally I was giving in. It made me uncomfortable to need someone to comfort me, but after what I had gone through with him within the last 2 days, it was worth the risk. He was the only person, besides Anne, whom I could trust with my whole heart.
If so, I would love to stay with you here tonight, but I don't think I can stand to sleep in the guest room.
His inquisitive gaze met mine. I'm not sure I'm ready for this, I said in a low voice. I looked down to avoid his stares. I wasn't even sure what I wasn't ready for, to spend the night with him in the same bed, or to get so attached to him that I could never let him go. I thought you would be bound to earth energy if you have, I couldn't bring myself to say the word. It had been so long since I had slept with anyone. After David, I had a few relationships that lasted at most a few months, but following my mother's death, I was in mourning for the first year. I didn't leave my house aside from going to work, and in the second year after her death, I lost interest in relationships.
I said I would be bound to earth energy if I have a child with you. I didn't say I cannot be intimate with you.
He corrected me. Oh, I said, realizing. I wished my misunderstanding had been true. It would have eliminated awkward moments for me.
Don't worry, Lara. I have no intention of doing anything you're not ready for. I just want to be close to you, and besides, I don't think you could keep up with me.
He grinned as he leaned over and kissed me softly on my cheek before standing up.
There are a few things I need to do. I'll be right back.
About 15 minutes after he left, I was still sitting on the couch trying to digest what had happened all day and how I had traveled to the other side of the world and come back. It suddenly dawned on me that I hadn't checked my phone. I had turned it off for the trip, but it never occurred to me to turn it back on when we arrived home. I knew Anne would have called me. Guilt settled over me again. What kind of a friend was I? She was having the worst day of her life, and it never occurred to me to check on her. I had 3 missed calls, 2 voice messages, and 2 text messages that appeared on the screen. I didn't bother to check the messages, but called Anne right away. "Where the hell have you been?" she yelled at me as soon as she picked it up. "I'm sorry, Anne. I didn't realize my phone was off." "Do you know how worried I was?" she exclaimed. "You said you had a date with Azar and then you disappeared. I was worried sick." She raised her voice again. "I'm so sorry, Anne." I was repeating myself in my attempt to apologize. She already had so many things on her plate, and I was creating more trouble for her. She sighed deeply. I could sense her disappointment. "How did it go?" she finally asked. "It must have been very good, otherwise you wouldn't forget about me," she said, emphasizing the word forget. I could hear the sarcasm in her voice. "I'm sorry, Anne. I didn't mean to worry you." I apologized again, helplessly. But it was magical. We were outside the whole day. I couldn't tell her exactly what we had done, so I had to come up with a story. "We went to Helen," I lied. "It's a small German town about an hour and a half from Atlanta. He's a gentleman. I've never met anyone like him," which was the truth. "I'm so happy for you," Anne said, and I knew she genuinely meant it. "Did he leave? Are you going to see him again?" I paused for a split second. I was debating whether to tell her the truth or not. Azur opened the door and said,
I'm back.
enthusiastically without seeing that I was on the phone. "Oh my God, he's still there." Anne had heard his voice. "Yes, he's still here," I admitted. "Is he going to stay the night?" Anne asked. "Be careful, Lara," she added with concern, but then she must have remembered about my celibacy since my mother passed away. "You know what? Forget what I said and suck him dry, will you?" She laughed at her own comment. I must have blushed because I could feel the heat in my cheeks. Azur was standing by my side, and he probably heard the whole conversation. He headed to the bathroom. I guessed he wanted to give me some privacy. "How are things with you and Jack?" I was anxious to change the subject. "Any progress?" "Nope, nothing," she said, but she sounded like she was in a better place with everything that was happening. "I've decided to give him space instead of trying to force myself into his life. I'll take the kids and go to Tampa next week. I've already purchased the tickets. My mom is expecting us. I spoke to him again and he's okay. We both need to sort things out." "Are you sure about going to Tampa?" It was too late to ask since she had the tickets, but I couldn't help myself. I was skeptical about her leaving him alone for another week. "I'm very sure. I know what you think. Maybe I shouldn't leave him alone. But if it's not meant to be, then it's not meant to be. Lara, I shouldn't have to fight for my happiness anymore. If he's the right person for me, then happiness will follow." Anne was always the brave one. She didn't give up on him, but she wanted to give him space to make the right decision for himself. She didn't want to spend rest of her life with someone who didn't love her anymore. "You're right," I agreed. "If it doesn't work, He'll still be the father of my kids, she added. I wasn't so sure about her comment, having first-hand experience of my own father abandoning both Mom and me, but I didn't want to discourage her. I'm going to let you go. I bet your Prince Charming is waiting for you anxiously. Remember, suck him dry, she giggled. I stood in the middle of the room. Azur came out of the bathroom, which made me wonder if aliens actually need to go to the bathroom or brush their teeth. It seemed he had washed his face. I couldn't ask him about the details. That would ruin the moment. His presence seemed intimidating again, and it made me feel insignificant. I kept repeating to myself that he was my soulmate, and his feelings for me were nothing but unconditional love. But how about my feelings for him? Were they as pure as his? How about my insecurities? He had said it was okay. He was aware of my insecurities, yet he accepted me, because his love was pure. Are you hungry? I asked, while we both stood in the middle of the living room, not knowing exactly what to do next. I knew he wasn't hungry. I had noticed he didn't eat much in general. I had the feeling that he ate only to keep me company, and even I was still stuffed from the meal we'd had in Turkey. But I had to say something.
No, I'm not.
He said, and smiled. He came toward me, held my arms, leaned down and kissed my lips. I froze at first, but then a tremor of electric waves went through my body. It felt as if I was being electrocuted, and it was painful. I tried to hide my reaction, but I couldn't breathe. My eyes were wide open, watching him intently to see what he was going to do next. His eyes were closed, but he opened them right away when he realized I was shaking under his lips and pulled away. I tried to catch my breath, not registering what had just happened. He looked concerned.
I'm sorry. I should go easy on you. My frequency is high for you.
I looked up at him, perplexed. It was like an electric shock, I blurted. Is it always going to be like that? How could I not kiss the man I loved, and how could I not touch him?
We both need to vibrate at the same frequency. Your body cannot compete with mine if your ego is running the show.
He gave me a reassuring smile and continued anyway.
I promise you it'll get better.
One more incentive to practice your teachings diligently. I winked at him and smiled, but I was worried.
You know, my people don't have to physically touch each other to feel this way. And they don't even have to be in the same room,
he said, still holding me in his arms.
We have a strong telepathic connection to each other, especially when we mate. We can even have sex telepathically, and it can be more intense than being physical.
Huh? I nodded, but I couldn't really picture what he was trying to tell me. This sounds like watching porn on TV, I commented, revealing my lack of understanding. He laughed.
No, it is not. On the contrary, you feel one with the other person and complete with your whole existence. Not only physically, but also emotionally and soulfully.
His comment made me even more self-conscious about my inability to please him. Do you wish I could do that? I asked, a little upset. He ran his hand through my hair again to keep the curls off my face, looking at me through his eyelashes.
You used to be able to, but no, I don't wish, not right now. You're perfect the way you are right now. It doesn't change anything between us. You'll eventually remember to communicate with me telepathically. Besides, it pleases me very much to see that even the tiniest touch from me excites you tremendously.
He replied, teasing. You arrogant! But I couldn't complete my sentence as he was always a gentleman to me.
I bought pajamas.
He pointed at the shopping bag sitting on the table.
I've never owned any before,
he said with a grin. I was taken aback by the abrupt change in the conversation. I looked at him blankly.
I don't sleep much,
he explained.
So I never owned any, but I thought it would be appropriate to have some for tonight,
he said sheepishly. I smiled at him. He warmed my heart. He was trying to be human to be with me, and probably didn't know that most men wouldn't bother to have any kind of pajamas in a situation like this.
If you wake up in the middle of the night and I'm not in bed, don't panic. I'm probably meditating in the living room. It helps to maintain my energy more than sleeping does.
Okay, I said, nodding my head. And, I need to freshen up, I said, pointing toward my bedroom awkwardly.
Okay,
he replied, also nodding.
I guess I'll make myself comfortable.
Yeah, sure, I confirmed, heading to my bedroom, and he followed. I took my sleepwear with me into the bathroom. I turned on the shower, but waiting for the water to warm up felt like it took forever, as I couldn't stand being away from him even for a few minutes. The warm water felt great on my skin. I realized how tense I had been since morning, and the water washed away my anxiety about the trip and everything else I had experienced during the day. The familiar scent of my shampoo grounded me even more. I was much more relaxed. I struggled to put on my knit top and pajama pants quickly, as my body was still wet, but I was rushing to be back with him as soon as I could, so I dried my hair only briefly. When I came out of the bathroom, I was again taken aback by the sight of him. He was sitting on my bed, relaxed, leaning back against the headboard. He was wearing long pajama bottoms and a navy blue t-shirt, holding the Oprah magazine I'd been reading the other day. He put the magazine back on the nightstand and smiled with a godly innocence on his face. I thought about going back into the bathroom to hide. I wasn't sure this was my reality anymore. It was too strange not to be a dream.
Good stuff.
He said, pointing at the magazine. He was on my side of the bed. I'll take this side, I muttered, and indicated the opposite side awkwardly, as if he had asked me. He got to his feet, approached me, and lifted me as though I didn't weigh much. He gently put me down on the right side of the bed where I always slept. The bed was warm already. He lay down next to me and hugged me tightly.
Your hair is wet again.
He made a soft sound in his throat. His face was buried in my hair, and he took a deep breath, as if he was trying to fill his lungs with my scent. I couldn't turn my face towards him, terrified that if I did, the magic of the moment would disappear forever. I stayed where I was, not moving, and closed my eyes. Stay tuned for Chapter 11 and more incredible artwork. Please remember to like our videos and subscribe to our channel.